Everyone, hello, big huge welcome to everyone watching us from all over the world. If you can see us wherever you're logged on and watching us, if you can give us a little hello in the comments so we can see that you're watching. I can already see the numbers pumping up now, so that is great, but it's always really good to know that you're there and where you are, so please let us know where you're watching us from. Welcome to the live masterclass Q&A number 3. So this is your last opportunity to talk to us and speak to our lovely education team. Well, Lorraine is our CEO, but Eliza is our wonderful grading tutor. Your last chance to ask us a question. We would love to hear from you. These Q&As have been so fun. We've really enjoyed doing them with all of you. And we are actually quite sad that this is your last opportunity, but please grab it with both hands and just throw out a question because we would love to answer it. We now have, I think, over 40,000 people doing this training all over the world, which is nothing short of absolutely amazing. We are so proud of you for taking on this challenge. We've seen your wonderful pictures in the skincare mastermind group, and it has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for using the threads that we've been putting up and asking us your questions. We've uploaded quite a few of them already to answer for you. And let's kick off. If we'd like to have a little introduction from Eliza, that would be great.
Hi everyone, I'm Eliza and I'm a tutor with Formula Botanica and I'm with the education team. I've been here since February 2020 and it has been a wonderful journey for me here and I'm so excited to be here to answer all of your questions.
Lorraine?
Yes, welcome to Q&A part 3. And what I just want to add is that Eliza is a brilliant formulator as well. She's been very modest. So you're very lucky to have this audience with her today because she knows a lot about formulating. She's much better formulator than me. So I am thrilled to be on as well. So I hope you've been enjoying your masterclass. Obviously, episode 8 becomes available today, which will be all about substitutions, how to customize your facial emulsion. And we want to see your photos. We want to see how you're getting on. We want to hear from you. So I really want to hear how everyone's getting on in the masterclass. Please do post up, share your photos with us if you're watching this on Facebook. And looking forward to today.
Just a quick hello and thank you to everyone for letting us know where you are. We've got people from London, Sri Lanka, Malta, the Congo, wow, amazing, Mumbai, Indonesia. So thank you so much. We love seeing where you're from. It's fantastic. Right, let's get started. First question, I'm just pulling it randomly. Okay, seen a few people talk about this. Why do we have to test the pH? Lorraine, let's go to you.
Okay, so you obviously watched me test the pH using a really simplified method in episode 7 of your masterclass. And it's really important to know what the pH of your formulation is. And I know a lot of people initially look at that and think, it's a bit scary and sciencey, but I just want you to remember it's not scary. It's really easy to do. Don't get overwhelmed by it, which is why we just did that simplified version in the masterclass just to get you started. So you need to know the pH because, first of all, our skin and also our hair has a pH, and you want to make sure that the product you make is roughly in line with that pH. So the skin has a pH of about 4 to 5.5. So that's why we want our skincare products to roughly sit in that pH range as well. A really good example would be to say, this is why you don't use soaps on your face, or you probably shouldn't. I know some people do, but soaps tend to have quite a high pH. So if you use them constantly on your face and your face has a much lower pH, your skin will start to dry out a bit. So that's the first one. Then the second one is also that, as we talked about in episode 7, some preservatives work better at particular pH ranges. So if you have a product, if you've made a formulation that has a pH of 7 and your preservative works in a very narrow pH range of say 5 to 5.5, and your supplier will tell you this, so you will always get that information, then you can see that actually the preservative wouldn't work because your formulation's pH is at the wrong level. So those are 2 really important reasons that that you have to keep in mind when you're formulating. Have I missed anything, Eliza?
No, I think that's perfect.
Okay.
Well, the next one is kind of attached to this one, so let's put them together. So what is a pH adjuster and why do we need one? Eliza?
Oh, okay. Well, pH adjuster are the ones that you adjust the pH, like what Lorraine says, if the pH is not in the correct range, then you would use these adjusters to adjust the pH. It comes in the range, pH comes in the range between 1 to 14. So the lower the number is, it becomes acidic. The higher the number, then it's more alkaline. So if you formulate something where the ingredients that you put in comes with a range of different pH, you would want to see what is the final, the final pH before adding in the preservative. So if you need to move it lower, say you want to move from pH 7 to move it down to pH 5, then you have to use a pH adjuster which is acidic. Example, citric acid. Or if you want to move it higher, then you use sodium bicarbonate because that is more alkaline. So that's the reason why we use these pH adjusters.
Okay, thank you. So, question from Temi. Temi says, how do you maintain the temperature of the water in your water bath when heating your oil and water phase? Eliza, what do we think?
Is this question meaning to say that when you put your oil and water in the water bath, the water heats up slower? I would think so. So we discussed about this earlier. For me, I will always put in the water phase first to give it a head start so that it gives it more time to heat because the water phase is bigger. And then you put in the oil phase. And then you monitor the two temperature. But if you find that the oil phase has reached the temperature, I would advise you to take it out while waiting for the water phase to heat up. And then you manage from there. A bit tricky, but doable.
Okay, next question. What if my formulation worked, but I just don't think it's perfect? Can I improve it? Lorraine, what do we think about that?
That is such a good question. So this is what formulators do, basically. I mean, you don't just make one formulation and then leave it at that and never make another one. You might go through 10, 15, 20 iterations of a formulation. And that's why formulators have so much fun, because they get to experiment with all these different plants, which is also what we talked about in the masterclass. So if you don't like your formulation, then you've got to really, what I want you to do is grab your workbook or your notebook. I haven't got one to hand at the moment. I'm looking around me. See, there you go. You've always got to write down everything that you do. And what I also want you to do afterwards, and I think we've got this in the workbook at the end, we want you to write down your thoughts on your formulation, skin, feel, color, texture, and fragrance. So this is actually one of the exercises for lesson 5. And once you've done that, look at what you don't like about it. Because if you think your formulation isn't perfect, there will be one or two aspects of it that you don't like. Like you might not like the fragrance, or you might not like the skin feel, or you might not like the spreadability of it, for instance. And that's when you then start to tweak those little things. So if you don't like the skin feel, you might try a different emulsifier. You might try a different oil. You might add in a wax or a butter. If you don't like the fragrance, you might add in another essential oil, take out the one you've got and create a different blend. Or, this is where you have fun with it. So that's the big message I want to get across is formulation isn't set in stone. It's there for you to experiment. Much like if you were making a cake, you might go, you know what, next time I think I'm going to add in raspberries, and you try something different. So that's what I want you to take away from this masterclass as well. And you'll see this in episode 8 as well when it is launched onto your masterclass study area later today as well.
Great. So we have a question. Lorraine, you're mentioned in this one, so I'm throwing this out to you. We will see. So Susanna says, hello from Denmark. Lorraine mentioned in an episode in the masterclass that the effective ingredients should not be more than 10% of the formulation. Why is that? Lorraine, did you say that?
I said,
let's check that first.
Let's do a fact check.
Yeah.
I said your cool down stage shouldn't encompass more than 10% of your formulation. And that's when you've made the emulsion itself. Now, that's not to say that the ingredients you added before that to create the base, like we did in lesson 3, aren't effective. I mean, you're adding in hydrosols, you're adding in oils, you're adding in your emulsifier. You could expand on that and add in butters and waxes and all sorts of other stabilizers as well. But when you want to add in the more heat sensitive ingredients, which are often the more high performance ones, those are the ones you add in once your formulation is starting to cool down. Now, the reason we say about 10% is if you added in a lot more, like imagine that you go, right, I really want to add in rosehip oil. I'm going to put in 40% or that would be quite a lot. And all of a sudden your emulsion would probably split. So that's why we tend to work on that ratio of about 10%. But play around with it. I mean, that's the beauty of being a formulator, right? push it to 11 if you've got something you really want to go for, and see how your emulsion holds up. That's the fun of experimentation.
I like that. Push it to 11. Push it to 11, Susanna.
bit Spinal Tap there.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, next one. How do you go about substituting ingredients if they are not sustainable? What would be a good substitute for rosewood? Eliza.
I can't think of any offhand. Lorraine, would you know what would be a good substitute for rosewood?
I think first of all, let's start with the main bit. What do you do if your ingredient isn't sustainable? I mean, you know roughly why you want to add a particular ingredient in. And in this case, presumably we're talking about fragrance, but you might be talking about therapeutic properties as well. So I would start to look at where you can get that type of therapeutic property elsewhere. And there will be plenty of other ingredients that offer those same antioxidant or anti-inflammatory or whatever compounds that you want to add in. In terms of the fragrance, I have to say I'm not an aromatherapist and I'm not great at scent blending. This is not my forte, but there are plenty of other fragrances out there. I haven't smelt rosewood actually. Have you, Eliza? Because I've never bought it because of its sustainability challenges.
I have. Out of curiosity, it doesn't smell like rose. It's a bit mixture of rose, musky combination. It's a bit weird, but it's not that bad. Yeah.
Well, I think what you can do as a formulator is start to look at the scent profile. And again, your suppliers will tell you roughly what sort of scent profile comes with your essential oil. They'll, if it is musky or woody or spicy or whatever, and try and experiment with other fragrances to get those same sort of properties into your overall blend.
Yes.
I'd just like to take a moment to say welcome everyone to everybody. We have had a few comments of people saying they still can't find some ingredients, but don't worry, just follow the masterclass, watch the lessons every day as they become available, and just go with us and use the community, use our Facebook group for support, and just see what people are posting, because it's very important. And you can get so much from it. So don't panic if you don't have your ingredients yet. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry to jump in there, Lisa, but the other thing to remember is, we've put the supplier guide in here for a reason. These people do tend to stock these ingredients. And, I've seen plenty of people in the US, for instance, go, I can't find it. And then the one right at the top has almost all of them, so use the supplier guide. Now, that's not to say that every single country will stock all of these ingredients. And we do have that in here as well. It says at the bottom that you might have to import. So just be prepared that you might have to purchase from abroad, because some countries just don't have particularly good cosmetic ingredient suppliers. But that's something that you can navigate. And many of those suppliers will ship internationally as well.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. I watched episode 7. I noticed that you took the pH level before adding preservative. What about afterwards? Lorraine. I love the way Lorraine smiles. She's like, I've got this one.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. You should test it afterwards. I mean, keep in mind, this is a simplified version of what we're teaching you. So if you were watching our courses and any of our course videos, you would watch us do it twice. That we're just trying to keep things very simple here. Also, the pH was at the right level roughly when I added the preservative. So I know from experience that it will be fine afterwards. However, you're right. I mean, you should be testing the pH multiple times throughout the formulation. But for anyone watching who hasn't done this before, don't get overwhelmed by this. Honestly, it is very straightforward and you can do this too.
Lots of questions on pH here. I think we've covered pH quite a bit. So let's move on to, this is a bit of a mouthful.
Sorry, Lisa, if I can say, I saw someone say that, Lorraine, could you please talk a bit louder? Probably not hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. No, you
So
did
sexy.
actually, you dipped out for a second there. I'm actually quite happy to hear Lorraine has mic problems, because I've been having them forever. And now it's not me. Yeah, let us know about the sound also, as well as your questions. Okay, so next one. Oh, this is a bit of a mouthful. Can I use cetyl alcohol instead of cetyl alcohol and cetyl glucoside as the emulsifier? Oh, it's way too early for a question like that. But Eliza, what do we think?
Okay, cetyl alcohol is not a standalone emulsifier. It is very different from cetyl alcohol and cetyl glucoside, which is a combination of emulsifier that has been designed by the manufacturer. So this is the inky name for the Vegetal or Montana 68. So if you use cetyl alcohol, on a standalone basis, it will not work. But you can use it as a co-emulsifier to add in with your vegetal if you have, to create a more robust texture, for example, or to thicken it up. So no, you can't use it on a standalone basis.
And I've seen a lot of people post this up in the groups to go, oh, I couldn't get the emulsifier, so I've just got one part of it. And I really want to encourage you, everyone watching, to understand that, you know, if you take one chemical out, doesn't mean it's going to have the same properties as the blend that we were recommending for the emulsifier. And this is why, obviously, learning those inky names is so important.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, next question. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Well, Linua, sorry for that. What makes a good formulator after the course? What should people do when they've finished the masterclass? Lorraine.
What makes a student a good formulator? Well, someone who a good formulator is someone who really enjoys experimenting, and someone who gets to know their ingredients really well, and someone who just likes to dive into their lab and have great fun with it. And you will notice that the more passion you put into it, the more time you invest in it, the better you get. So I'd say those are the main principles, which is the same with anything really, any hobby that you might want to turn into a profession. Now, I will add that on Wednesday, we open up enrollment for our International Organic Skincare Entrepreneur Program. So if anyone wants to take their studies further in this masterclass, and I've seen plenty of people say, what programs do you offer Formula Botanica? I'd like to take the next step. Then we will be opening enrollment for that. But we'll tell you all about that later in the week. And we've got a special live webinar at 6 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, when we'll be walking through more about the entrepreneur program, but also sharing our blueprint for how to become an organic skincare entrepreneur.
Great. Okay, next question. Which other preservatives can I use if I can't get hold of the one you're using in the masterclass? What do you think, Eliza?
I think we're covering substitutions in the next session, but offhand, if you can get a broad spectrum preservative, I won't name names right now, but if you look at wherever you are, search for broad spectrum preservative, and they must have a pH efficacy range, if possible, between 3 to 8, not too narrow, then it should work for you.
Yeah, the reason, oh, sorry, Lorraine, go ahead.
And it's in your workbook for today as well. So we've got episode 8 covers a whole load of substitutions and other ingredients that you can use. We don't go through preservatives in it. They're just in your workbook. So just access page 24 in your workbook. They're right there. We've put 4 extra ones in there for you to experiment with.
And the reason why we have done this in the masterclass is we had to put it in chunks, basically, because there's so much information we need to tell you. So we know so many of you have questions so soon, but that is why we've designed it in the way that we've done it. So just follow the masterclass, trust the process, and we'll get there in the end. Okay. So this person says, help. My cream won't thicken. What have I done wrong? Eliza, what could this person have done wrong?
Okay, the first thing I would check is make sure that the supplier sent you the correct emulsifier that you wanted, which is a vegetal or equivalent. The second thing you should check is the temperature that you have when you mix both phases together. This means when you heat both phases up to 75 degrees Celsius, when you pour them from the oil phase to the water phase, make sure that it is still roughly about 75 degrees to complete, or rather to pour the whole oil in, and as you pour in, you keep on stirring. So if you don't do that, and as you pour, if you take it out of the water bath and you pour it, and the temperature falls down, especially if you're in a very cold environment, it will not be at the temperature where the emulsification process can complete. So that means if it doesn't thicken, means the emulsification process did not work very well. So you need to ensure that temperature is at the same level when you pour both phases, or rather when you combine both phases together.
Great, thank you. So next question. Sorry about the names, by the way. Fearil, I think this is, says, I want to know about extracts. How effective are glycerates, and at what percentage is it effective? Can I use fresh fruits and veggies in my products like Lush does, and how do they preserve them? There's a lot in there, but let's take out the important things. Lorraine, what do we think?
So glycerites are a really great way of getting different herbs and plants and fruits and veg into your formulations, because glycerin in itself is a self-preserving compound. It has very low water activity. We explain all of this in our preservation certificate. But basically, it's very easy to put plant matter into glycerites and extract them that way. And in fact, when you buy extracts from online cosmetic ingredient suppliers, they tend to be glycerites. They are actually extracted into glycerin, or they have been extracted with a different method and then put in glycerin. So at what percentage is it effective depends entirely on what you're using and what the plant is. I wouldn't go too high. Most people don't like a really sticky product. Glycerin is quite sticky. If you live in an area with high humidity, and I'm sure that we have plenty of people viewing us today who are in areas of high humidity, then it could be even more unpleasant. On the other hand, some people love a high glycerite percentage formulation, so experiment with it. In terms of fresh fruit and veg, yes, you can put those into glycerin. How does Lush do it? That is a great question, and one that I have pondered over for many years. Now, Lush has their, and I know Lush well, they have their fresh face masks, for instance. So if you go into their stores, they always have one of those little fridge areas where they have those face masks. Those tend to have a very short shelf life. So you're looking at less than 2 weeks. So for that reason, they sell their products fresh. I have seen a couple of formulators and skincare brands do this. They are in the minority because obviously there is a whole operational system you have to build behind having a product that only has a shelf life of a couple of weeks, but it is doable. However, you'd have to get through safety assessment here in the EU and other parts of the world where those requirements are in place with the legislation. So I would start off by practicing with the preservatives that we recommend, and then you can always start to take it a step further and see where you want to take it with fresh fruit and veg. And just one other thing, I know I saw someone just comment and say that they couldn't watch the videos. We've got over 41,000 people taking part in the masterclass. So if you do have any tech issues, there will always be, 1 or 2 little hiccups here. So just email us at hello@formulabotanica.com and get in touch, because we'd like to help you.
And speaking of help, I've seen so many questions come through, and we can actually see people helping other people who are joining in the masterclass and part of our community. So if you do see a question and you know the answer and you're just in our community, feel free to jump in and help that person, because that's what Formula Botanica is all about, really, peer-to-peer support. So please feel free to just jump in and help. Okay, next question from the lovely Tarzin. Can I add moringa powder or any kind of fruit powder in the formulation that we have just learnt? Lorraine?
Yes and no. Now, remember that plant powders don't dissolve. I think that's a really important point to note. So you might think, oh, I can just extract moringa into a powder and then I put it in my water and it will dissolve. That's not how it works. It'd be the same like if you put moringa leaves in your tea, they don't dissolve either. So if you put powders into your cream, and I've got one of the face creams here, it would just become more of a scrub because you'd have all the powdered bits in there and it might be a little bit gritty. Saying that if you put a teeny tiny amount in, then it probably wouldn't be that noticeable. So yeah, I think you can put them in, but it depends on what sort of skin texture you're trying to achieve and what you want the powder to do in the formulation. What do you think, Eliza?
No, I agree with you, Lorraine. The other way to test, because it's very hard to know whether this powder be added or not, just take a little bit and put it in some water, and then just stir it and see whether it dissolves or not. If it doesn't, then you know that you can't. I wouldn't, because then preservation would be an issue if you put it in and then, it's gritty. What you can do is make glyceride from it and see how it goes.
Okay, next question. Thank you, Liza. So Mare says, please can you tell me, the cream that we formulated this week, can it be a body cream, foot cream, hand cream? I provided various and suitable botanicals. Maybe she's asking which botanicals she can use to suit if it is a body cream, foot cream or hand cream. So what kind of cream are we making for the masterclass? Lorraine?
Well, I think I should actually ask this question to Eliza since she designed the formulation. But I think they're suitable for the whole body, because originally the cream you made actually was a body cream and then we changed it to a face cream. So I think the essential oil percentages are fine, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
There you go. So we're talking to the master here. Eliza designed the cream for us.
Well, I would say, different parts of our body has different thickness of skin. So if you were to design something for a foot cream, you would want something that is thicker. So then that's where you will have to change maybe the content of the emulsifier, the percentages. You may want to make it to have a more occlusive layer, so you would add more oil phase in it. We teach all that in our diploma in skincare formulation course. Sorry, I had a brain mental block for a moment. So yeah, it really depends on which part of the body that you want to use it for. But the one that we have in the masterclass, you can use it anywhere, for the face, for the body. If you use it on your foot, you may find that it's a bit too light, but yes, you can.
So this question kind of ties into that. We kind of partly answered it. Would we call this a cream, a lotion, or a butter? What sort of consistency should I be looking for? So for our formulation, Eliza, what kind of consistency should they be aiming?
You should be aiming for a cream consistency. Now, the cream consistency, again, it can be a light cream, it can be a heavy cream, also depending on the percentage of oils that you have in the formula. There you go. So if you're aiming for a lotion, so you should be able to pour, and the lotion should be able to dribble out of the jar, but it's not the case here. Yeah, it's not. She just confirmed. Just confirm it. So it is a cream consistency that we are looking for. So when you make it on day one, it will probably look a little bit loose, or I won't say runny, but loose, pourable. Leave it overnight, because usually it takes about 24 hours to set. And then the next day, when you open the jar or when you check it, voila, becomes a cream.
Voila.
Okay. That could have gone horribly wrong there, by the way. A bit of a risk there by going, let's tip it upside down. No, all good.
They call it the meringue test, don't they?
Exactly.
We're doing that in the second one. Okay, next question from the lovely Mandy. Can the glycerin be added in the water stage instead of the cool down stage, Eliza?
If it's pure glycerin, yes, you can. There's no issue with adding straight to the water stage. When I presume that you're saying that when it's heated. Yes, you can.
Okay. There's a few questions in here. If we want to adjust our pH, how do we calculate the lactic acid amount to add? If we use hydrosols or extracts that already contain preservatives, how can we adjust our final preservative amount? That's a long question. Eliza?
Okay, we'll take the first one. To adjust the pH. Now, the lactic acid pH adjusters, it comes in different concentrations. So when I say different concentration, means it's either at 50% or 20% or 30%. What does this mean? This means that depending on the supplier that you're purchasing from, lactic acid sometimes comes, the ones that I have, it comes in, if I'm not mistaken, it's 88%, which is quite strong. So which means you only need maybe 1 drop or 2 drops to adjust the pH. But if you find that it's too strong, then you can actually dilute it. But when you dilute it, you got to write down how much percentage of water that you diluted. Maybe you want to make it half the strength. And label the bottle and use it accordingly. So if you are buying straight from the seller and it's at 88%, so use a pipette, just drop 1 drop, mix it, test your pH, and see whether it adjusted the pH to what you want. If not, then add 1 more drop, and then you test it. There is no hard and fast rules about how to use pH adjusters. That is why they are not included in the formula. They are always written as much needed.
Great.
So then the next question, if you have hydrosols or extracts that are already preserved, I wouldn't worry so much, because if you're going to heat up the hydrosols, the preservative that was preserved earlier or that was used earlier would have been deactivated, because preservatives generally don't like heat, and extracts are used in a very, very minimal amount. So I wouldn't worry about that either. So use the preservative at the end of the formula as recommended by the manufacturer.
Great, thank you, Eliza. I've just got a battery warning popped up on my computer because I forgot to plug my charger in. So while I throw this question up, I'm going to have to disappear, grab my charger, and pop it in. So if you could make this question last, the duration, however long that takes, that would be fabulous.
I'll do my best.
Okay. Oh. Okay, how do you know how much preservative to add to your product? Right, go. Back in 1 minute.
Ooh. Oh, shall I? I'll start. Okay, so and we talked about this in lesson 7 as well. And Eliza just said it too. It's as much as required and as little as, have I said that right? As little? No, I've forgotten. You just said it. What was it?
As much needed, as little as possible.
See, I should know this. I've been saying it for so many years and I always forget exactly how it goes. So you want to basically, it's a balancing act. And that's the first thing to keep in mind. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that your supplier will tell you. So when you purchase an ingredient, it will come with the paperwork that tells you exactly what the recommended percentage is to use in there. And that's why it's a really good thing to use reputable suppliers, because they'll give you that guidance. So they'll come to you and say, look, you should be using between X and Y percentage of this preservative. And then you play around with it a little bit and you can do some total viable count tests at home. Obviously, we cover this. We don't cover this in the masterclass because it is slightly too advanced, but we cover this in our preservation certificate. And then you can send it off for lab testing as well once you're at the stage that you feel very confident with it. So yeah, I'd say work with your supplier. They'll give you the guidance you need. And welcome back, Lisa.
As Eliza was talking, I could hear this warning thing coming up at the bottom. Sorry about that. Right. Next question. Well done for covering. Okay. What is the difference between cosmetic grade essential oils and commercial grade essential oils? We see so many of them. What is the difference? Eliza?
Honestly speaking, I thought they were the same, because the ones that I've been using, they use the terms interchangeably. Do you know anything about this, Lorraine?
Yeah, there are so many different terms for essential oils out there. You've got, medicinal grade, you've got therapeutic, You've got all sorts of terms that are used, but they are marketing terms. So no, there shouldn't be a difference between these two, to my knowledge, unless there are any aromatherapists in the house who want to jump in the comments and correct me. But I think it's just a marketing term.
Great, thank you. Question from Karma. That's a great name. Can I use distilled water in case I don't have hydrosols, especially when making an emulsion? Lorraine?
Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. If you can't get hold of a hydrosol, distilled water is a good alternative. I will say that we tend to prefer hydrosols because they contain those beautiful plant compounds that you don't get in distilled water. But yes, you can use distilled water.
Okay, great. Question from Claudia. What do I need to consider during formulation to make sure the pH remains within the alkaline and acidity levels recommended for the skin? Eliza?
Sorry, I'm just reading it again.
Some of them are quite long.
I was just reading it again. Well, you use pH adjusters, as what we mentioned earlier earlier on the earlier questions. You just make your formulations or include whatever ingredients that you want, and before you add the preservative, always check the pH and adjust it if you need to with the pH adjusters, and then add your preservative, then check your pH again to make sure that it's within the range that you're aiming for.
Great.
Yeah.
Next question. So what are the recipe or rules to become a good formulator? I'm going to jump in here and say don't use the word recipe, but I will let Lorraine explain why we don't use the word recipe. So Lorraine, what do we think?
It's a great question. And I will say we also had another question in saying what's the difference between DIY formulation and cosmetic formulations. I think it's probably worth mopping that one up at the same time. I mean, as I said before, becoming a good formulator involves experimenting. So I've seen a couple of people, for instance, post up in our Facebook group and go, my emulsion didn't work. And it comes across as if, obviously people are very disappointed by that. But actually, I think we need to sit there and go, yes, let's celebrate this. You've had your first failure, because I want you to have lots of failures as a formulator. I want you to have all sorts of disasters in your lab, actually, because those are what make you the best formulator. Because you'll take so many learning points from that. You'll learn so much from these failures. So I think experimentation and not being scared of failure are two really important points to take on board when you want to become a formulator. And then what's the difference between DIY and cosmetic formulation? Well, a DIYer follows a recipe and a formulator creates a recipe. And that's the difference. We don't really use the word recipe at Formula Botanica, but just for this example, I will. So imagine if you're a DIYer and you want to make a face cream, you'll go and find a recipe. You'll buy a book. You'll go online. You'll go onto YouTube. You'll follow someone else. Once you become a formulator, you'll go, I want to make my own face cream. I know how to construct it. I know which ingredients I'm interested in at the moment. I've seen the latest, greatest botanical that I want to experiment with. I'm going to get a hold of that and I know what to do with it. And that's what makes you a good formulator, basically.
Great. Fantastic answer.
Can I jump in something?
Yeah.
Lisa, sorry, because Lorraine was mentioning about the learning process, that, if you have a failed formula, that's where you learn from it. Being here for more than almost 2 years, I have had graded hundreds, if not thousands, of assignments that comes into the for the projects. There were some students who got very upset, because they find that, I did this, I followed this, but it didn't work. They somehow got so exasperated with it and said that I wasted money. I want to put it out there. You did not waste money, because every failure is a learning curve for you. Every single step that you did, but make sure you write it down so that you learn from the failure. It is an investment to your skill as a formulator. So I just want to put it out there.
I think that's a really important point, because if you walk away at the end and you've said, right, I've made 50 emulsions and 10 of them were a disaster, but because of those 10 disasters, I made 40 that are absolutely fantastic, then that's the sign of a good formulator. And we want you to have lots of failures as you go through this process, because that's the best learning point. And the first emulsion I made looked like scrambled eggs, so can't be worse than that.
And as Eliza says, write it down. As we say here all the time, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Yeah. That's the best way you're going to learn. So that's why you have your workbook. Right, next question from the lovely Nita. Can I maintain the colour of some of the extracts in my formulations that change colour due to pH? Lorraine?
I knew you were going to pick on me for that.
You gave me the eye.
Next time I'll just look away. There can be some color shift, and that's where you have to start to work with fixatives, or what we call chelators, which will bind some of the components of your formulation. And I don't want to go too deep into it, because that's a more advanced process, really. And I know that there are a lot of people watching who have already been formulating for a while, and I know that there are a lot of people watching who have never formulated, or who've only literally just started by following the face cream in our masterclass. I don't want to go too deep into this. And if you do want to obviously go into more advanced formulation, we're here for you. We have those courses for you, and we would love to invite you in for the next step in your formulation journey. But yes, you have to start to work with some more advanced ingredients such as chelators in order to fix your color. Right,
fantastic. Question from Reem, who says, can you tell us the ingredients with percentage, please? No, we can't. This is our Q&A. That's why we have the masterclass, and that's why we have the workbook. So you have to follow the lessons and use your workbook, which Lorraine is going to expertly hold up. So I'm afraid we can't do that in this Q&A. But if you follow the masterclass, you will get the answers to all of those
Absolutely. Questions. And you'll be sent the formulation today as well. In fact, it should already be, or it will soon be, on your masterclass study area. So you can download everything there.
Great. So next question. This person is probably maybe having a second question. So hi again. How will I be able to test the stability of this cream after formulating it? Eliza?
Okay. Simply said, when you formulate the cream and you have checked the consistency of the texture of the cream on the second day, it is supposed to remain as it is for the days to come. So which means the texture, the color, the scent, the pH should remain more or less the same. And that is a good sign that, your method of processing produce a stable cream.
Fantastic. We covered this a little bit, but this person's just gone direct here. How can I make the lotion more thick? Should I reduce viscosity? Lorraine?
Well, yeah, we've covered this one already in this Q&A. So if you did join late, don't worry. The replay will be up on Facebook and YouTube afterwards, and you can just dive on that and watch it all again and go through it all. But Eliza provided some great advice on how to make sure that your lotion isn't too runny. It's all about just making sure that you accurately follow the process and that you are fully emulsifying it. But saying that, if you're not happy with the one that you've made and you've followed the whole process and you feel that the cream pretty much looks and feels like the one we've been holding up in the videos and the one I've got here, then you can always add slightly more emulsifier, or you can start to add thickeners. You could add a wax in there or a butter. There are lots of different options. You could add a gum in with the glycerite. There are, lots of different options. And that's where you start to practice a little bit more, make your formulations more complex. And you start to become a formulator at that stage, because you go, I want to change the skin texture and feel of my lotion. How do I do that? I know now that I can add this type of ingredient or this type of ingredient, and that's how I create the next stage of my lotion.
Thank you, Lorraine. So next question. Computer freeze there. Okay, so how do you sterilize the containers and know they are truly sterile? How do we know this to be? Lorraine?
We don't sterilize our containers. We sanitize our, there's a big difference between sanitization and sterilization. I know we all use the word sterilize because it's the one that we're most familiar with, but we're sanitizing because we're never going to be able to work in sort of clean room circumstances. Now, saying that, I think you covered this on one of, who covered this? Someone covered this on one of our last Q&As as well. But you can use the isopropyl alcohol that we use in, or that we recommend in episode 2. But actually, some people say you don't even need to sterilize your containers beforehand if they've been shipped to you from your supplier. It depends what state they arrive in, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, question from Christy. In the actual formulation process, can everything be added one after the other in the order shown in the masterclass? I think this person is saying, can I follow your instructions? Yes. The answer is yes to that, Christy.
Absolutely. Basically, think of episode 3, 5, and 7 as one block. And we obviously had other lessons in between because we wanted to provide context to everything that we were teaching you. But put them all together, follow them one after the other, and download the formulation sheet that you'll be getting in your workspace, in your study area today.
I'm just going to mention here, we're getting a lot of questions that we've already covered. So I just wanted to remind everyone, as Lorraine said, when this finishes, you will be able to go back and watch from the beginning. And you can also add your questions at the end, wherever you're watching. We will try and come back and help you. So don't worry if you didn't tune into the very beginning. I think we're going to just do a few more questions and then wrap it up. So if you do have a question, chuck it on now. Question from Louise, I think this is. Can I leave the essential oil out of the cream, and do I need to increase another ingredient if I do? What do we think? This is for both of you.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah?
Yes. Well, in this formula, I think we use 0.5% of essential oil. So then you just need to increase your water phase, which is your hydrosol, by the same amount. And then you can make sure that it totals up to 100%.
Yep. Absolutely. Have fun with it. Experiment. I mean, you're in episode 8. You're going to watch me run through a whole load of different alternatives to different extracts as well, different hydrosols, different oils. So take some inspiration from that and see what you want to add into your own cream. And then you can start to become a formulator.
Okay. Question from Nita. Is there any cold process emulsifier that we can use for formulating a cream? Lorraine?
Yes.
Are you going to hide behind your workbook?
I was just opening up my workbook. So we have covered 2 other hot process emulsifiers in the workbook that I'll be showing you in episode 8 later today. They are listed there as well. There are cold process ones too. It's slightly more advanced. I want you to get to grips with the basics first. But yes, there are plenty of them. We also have some excellent blog posts on our website. I know the team has been putting them up in the chat. At least I've seen them come past on YouTube. So go and check out our blog too. We've even got the guide to natural emulsification on there, which links to all of our other emulsification blog posts. So go dive in there and see what else you can find.
If the team can also add our Amazon links, if anyone's having trouble finding ingredients and equipment, that would be really helpful. We do try our best to help you source the best things out there. So just click on those and see what you can find. Okay, so last 2 questions. Coming to the end, exciting. So having made my base, can I add kojic acid powder to it directly into the base? Eliza?
Okay, kojic acid is a very sensitive ingredient, and it is something which I would really caution you to work with. Please get the documentation from the supplier, because then you will need to follow the recommended percentage that is meant for the particular batch that you have, and also check the pH efficacy. That means at what pH it's supposed to be in the cream. So if you want to add this in, also find out from the supplier how to add it in, because they should be able to provide you the directions. And later when you add it in, check the preservative, whether it's compatible, and adjust your pH accordingly.
Just to build on what Eliza was saying, kojic acid is one of those advanced ingredients that people want to go to straight away. We have a lot of people come to Formula Botanica who go, right, I've never formulated before. I'm going to make my first vitamin C serum. And we go, whoa, wait. First, we want you to learn the basics, and we want you to learn how to make an emulsion. And I would caution exactly the same with kojic acid powder, because I see a lot of people come to us. It's often used in skin lightening as well, which has its issues too. And I see people want to pack their creams full of kojic acid and bearberry and arbutin and licorice and all those ingredients that have been known to contribute to skin lightening. It can be sensitizing on the skin, if you put all of those ingredients together, or if you're working with a more high performance ingredient that you haven't worked with before. Just what Eliza said, just make sure you get the documentation, read it up properly, make sure you've got the base stable, then start to work with high performance ingredients. But I would always caution everyone that you first want to learn how to walk before you can run.
Yes.
That's a very good, that's a very good statement. We don't teach people how to be DIYers. We teach you how to create your own formulation. So that is a very good point, Lorraine. Okay. Oh, we've already done that one. Sorry.
We've had a couple of questions in about soapiness, and I'd quite like to just jump on that. So what people mean by soapy is if they put the cream on their skin, that sometimes it might leave a bit of a sort of white streak there before it's sort of moisturized or sunk into the skin properly. And different emulsifiers work in different ways, and different emulsifiers can be a little bit more soapy than others. Like, for instance, we use one a lot in our courses called Olive M1000, which is also listed on page 23 of your workbook, and that one can be quite soapy as well. And I just want to point out that emulsifiers are part of the chemical group called surfactants. Surfactants often are known for making your products foam, so your shampoos, your washing up liquid, for instance, if you've got that foaminess in there, that soapiness in there, emulsifiers are part of that group as well. So sometimes that happens. It's not a problem. You can play around with the percentage of emulsifier that you can use. You can also try different emulsifiers and see how you get on with it. It's just a matter of trial and error. Some people will make this cream like the one I've got here. Well, I've got quite a few of them here, actually. They're not soapy for me. They might be for you because of the supplier that you used. I mean, there could be a whole range of different factors at play here. So just play around with it.
Yeah. Have fun. Yes, have fun. Okay, so last question. This is from Gertrude. How can I check the shelf life of the product I make? Lorraine, how does someone know how long their product's going to last?
That is such a good question. We covered this already in episode 7 as well. So if you haven't watched episode 7, please do go and watch it, because I talk about stability testing at the end. And stability testing is a catch-all term for a whole load of different types of tests that you might have to use. And depending on the formulation you've made, you'll use different tests. We cover 20 of them in our stability testing certificate. Some of those you'll be able to do yourself. Some of them you will have to outsource. You don't have a choice in the matter. But you have to put your products through stability testing in order to determine the shelf life. And then stability testing has to sit at the heart of how you formulate. So every single batch you make has to be stability tested, which is why we teach a whole course on it, because it's so important. But no one's ever heard of it, which is why no one does it. But all the big brands do. And if you want to start an indie brand, then you have to as well.
Great. Thank you, Lorraine. We're going to end it there. I've seen so many questions. A lot of the questions are quite similar to each other. So please go back, delve into the questions section, and also watch this live from the beginning if you can. And as we keep saying, just follow the masterclass, follow the lessons. It is designed to kind of help you as you go. We know everyone wants to know all about stability and what can I use, this and that, etc., etc. But that is why we want you to watch lesson 8 today, because that is a really, really important one, and you're going to love it. And you get your formulation worksheet today as well, which is extremely exciting. So we're all very excited for you to get that in your inbox. And yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to Lorraine. Thank you, Eliza. We do value your time and your knowledge, and you've been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone watching. You know, it's been really lovely talking to you. Lovely to see all your questions. I know we've covered a lot. I'm sure you might still have some questions. So come into the group, talk to the others in there. And as we mentioned, we do open enrollment for our International Organic Skincare Entrepreneur Program on Wednesday. This is our flagship program. It's the big one. It contains all the 6 courses that you need to take you from beginner to having your own indie beauty brand. And in fact, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of people have gone through this program at Formula Botanica. I've got quite a few of them stood behind me here who are now successfully selling their products around the world. So we've had these live Q&A sessions to provide you with tutor support. Obviously, we don't normally do this because our tutors are working very, very hard behind the scenes to support our existing student community. I mean, we have over 14,000 students in 179 countries. So this was the last one of those tutor support lessons for you. But yeah, do come into the group if you do have other questions and chat to the others in there. And we hope to see you on the live webinar that we'll be hosting on Wednesday evening. Lisa and I will be there. We'll be joined by Ken, and we'll be walking you through the 3 secrets you need to know from the beauty industry to become a formulator, as well as sharing our organic skincare entrepreneur blueprint with you. So come and join us, and we will chat to you more there.
And as Lorraine has mentioned, we'll be going through some of our grads that have come from the entrepreneur program in lesson 9. So you'll get to see some of their products, which we love doing. Things like we love showing off our graduates. So please make sure you tune into that lesson as well.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that lesson. That was the most fun one to film. And I'll be sharing 5 skincare niches that you can delve into in order to make your brand stand out. And that will help tie your formulation philosophy from lesson 1 together with the formulations that you want to make.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Okay, that's great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a lovely
day.
day.